I found out as I was thinking about this, there's a couple of levels that when you meet somebody, there's a couple of levels that you meet them at. And when you first introduction, it's kind of a, I'll call it superficial. I don't mean that negative. It's just the surface. We started traveling after a while to Germany for several trips. And at one trip we went to Munich and had an extra day. So we went to Dachau. And there I saw Peter at a different level. And I could see why. It was an emotional experience for me. I know it was a bigger emotional experience for Peter. But I learned to respect this guy at a level that was a lot deeper than let's do some designs together. So I'm not going to take up much of Peter's time. He's only got 2 or 3 hours to talk. And he can do it that long. So let me just have a word of prayer, and then I'm going to turn to Martha or to Peter. Okay. Let's just pray now. Father, again, we're grateful for all you do for us and for this time together. May your name be honored in all that we say and we do. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. I remember the trip to Dachau a number of years ago, and it's you want to see what's there, but it's an awful experience to see what the Nazis did. And by coincidence, in my talk, I'll mention Dachau because Dachau was the camp that was used to get people from Vienna. It was a transport camp, and so a lot of my relatives started out in Dachau and then went to the death camps, but we don't know exactly who went where. I got into this business of reviewing the family history in a genealogy course that I took at the Osher Academy. Do any of you know about the Osher Academy of Lifelong Learning?
No.
It's part of the University of Delaware, and it's in Wilmington. It's a little far from here, but it's really worthwhile. There are courses in every imaginable subject, and one of them was genealogy, and so I took the course and decided I'm not really interested in family trees. What was more interesting to me is what did the people do and what happened. And so I assembled all the stuff that I had, and it was a lot. Massive numbers of documents in different languages, and then some tape recordings that I made of my parents and my uncles and aunts in the 70s, in the 1970s. Before the 1970s, nobody would talk about the Holocaust. It was just too painful. But I decided at that time, fortunately, I was going to record this stuff, and then later I digitized it. So I have those records, and then most of the stuff that I'll tell you about today is from first-hand accounts from those recordings and those documents. And of course, I'm particularly interested in what questions you might have and what your interests are about Judaism and Israel and the Holocaust. And so what I will do is kind of emphasize anti-Semitic actions that happened to our family at different times. And also I will emphasize the help that our family got from Gentiles. There's one thing that a lot of people don't understand, and that's anyone that survived this thing didn't do it alone, but they had help from Gentiles. And so if anyone ever tells you something like, I will never buy another German car, I'll never visit Germany, then you know automatically, at least I know automatically, that they were not directly impacted by the Holocaust, because if they were, they would know that there are plenty of Germans, plenty of Austrians that helped it, so you don't make that across-the-board damning of people. Anyway, what I'd like to talk about today is a couple things. One, tell you about Vienna, before and after what was called the Anschluss, when Germany took it over. Then I'd like to tell you about our escape from Vienna and getting to the United States. And then just a little bit, I want to tell you about America and what happened to the family in America and what happened on several trips back to Vienna. So starting in, so again, it's Vienna, our escape, and then the United States. And throughout, you'll find that the family, which was my mother, my father, and me, was split up and reconnected a number of times. So we were kind of lucky. A lot of people just didn't make it. Before the Anschluss was in March of 1938. I was about a year old at that time. Before the Anschluss, Jews in Vienna had a reasonably good existence, mostly middle-class existence. Of course, there were some very wealthy ones, mostly a middle-class existence, and anti-Semitism was always around. But it was a livable thing. It's like anti-black prejudice in the United States, except it got a little tougher. When my mother went to school, she said, and she went to school in a little town outside of Vienna, her brothers had to be dismissed early so that they could get home without being beat up. If they were dismissed at the same time as everyone else, the other kids would pound them. And there were, episodes like that, but minor. When the Nazis came in the Anschluss, when Vienna and all of Austria became part of Germany, things changed, and they changed fast. The Austrians, who later, in the times that I've been back to Austria, they kind of deny this. But in all the pictures and everything that I've read and everything that I've heard from my family, they loved the Nazis, and they were tickled to death when the Nazis came in. They didn't fire a shot. You'd see people with swastika flags welcoming them, and then it started. On day one, my father was chased by a mob, get the Jew, and he ran home. He was saved by his Gentile superintendent of the building where he lived. That was just for starters. And I made a list of things because there are so many episodes that happened. I was afraid I would forget some of them. So let me go through this list, and you get a sense of how the situation deteriorated. Well, I can't see it. I give you my best thoughts, and then I'll look at the list to see if I.
Do you need a light or do you need glasses?
Oh, thank you. Oh, right. Well, let me start anyway.
You could need eyeglasses too.
The Nazis are incredibly well organized, and they kept making laws. One of the first things that happened is you couldn't own pets. Then you couldn't be married to a Gentile. Marriage was automatically broken up. And then what affected a family life, you couldn't ride public transportation. And the rights just kept being taken away from you until the ultimate right for police protection was taken away from you. And then you're really in trouble. And in one case, my mother told me, matter of fact, I don't know if you read, I've read an autobiography, just sort of for kicks. And in the first page, I wrote an episode that my mother encountered. She went to a park, the famous Prater Park, which you may have heard of in Vienna, and she sat unknowingly in a no Jewish spot with me in a baby carriage. And a woman came over and threatened my mother immediately that she wasn't allowed to be there, and she was going to take me out of the baby carriage, throw me into the pond over there and watch me drown. That's the sort of flavor of things that happened, and that the unbelievable hatred of the civilians was unleashed. My mother's father was beat up and came home bloody one time. My grandmother, my father's mother, was threatened by a bunch of hoodlums, came into the car, and they wanted to throw her down the stairs, probably just for fun. And let me look at my list and see if as far as the transportation, you weren't allowed to ride the trolleys. My father and his sister rode the trolley once, and somebody screamed, "Stop the trolley!" Just imagine this. Stop the trolley. There are Jews on board, so they stopped the trolley, and they were thrown off the trolley. I have this on a recording, and I asked my aunt, how did they know you were Jewish? And her answer was kind of priceless. She said, by the nose. For some reason, Jews were not only by nose,